Hey guys, it's Hannah Satropa from Toronto Humane Society. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Pause in the Park weekend and is enjoying all of our incredible activities we have planned for you guys. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Jaclyn Ellis, and her beautiful furry friend as well. Um, what's her name, Jackie?
His name is Wyatt.
Wyatt. So Wyatt's going to be joining us as well today, guys. Very excited for that. We have some questions that you guys have asked Dr. Jaclyn Ellis that we're going to go through and address today. If you didn't get a chance to squeeze in your questions, no worries. You can add it in the comment section below and we will get back to you. So to introduce Dr. Ellis is Toronto Humane Society's Director of Behaviour. Dr. Ellis is one of the few certified applied animal behaviorists in Canada. So it's pretty incredible that we've got her on staff. Her groundbreaking work has been published by many peer-reviewed journals. Most recently, she has published not one, but 2 chapters in the upcoming edition of the Animal Behavior for Shelter Veterinarians and Staff. This is a leading textbook in the behavior of welfare for shelter animals. So we are so thrilled to have you on today, Jackie. Welcome to our Q&A for Pause in the Park.
My pleasure.
All right, so we'll dive right in. So the people want to know, we have a question from one of our supporters. My 3-year-old Labrador Retriever is aggressive towards other dogs. Whether it's my wife or I are with him, he's aggressive. It doesn't matter if he's on or off leash. If my son walks him, he's fine and ignores other dogs. Why might this happen and what can we do to reduce the aggression?
Okay, so the first, as with anything in behavior, unfortunately, it depends. I'd like to know a little bit more background. The questions I would ask if I was speaking to this person one-on-one would be, how do the walks differ? Do they walk the dog in the same area? Do they walk them at the same times of day? How do they respond when they see another dog versus how does their dog respond when they see another dog? Because their dog can easily be picking up on these subtle cues, or it may be that there's other patterns, we call them antecedents, things that happen immediately before the target behavior, in this case, the aggression towards other dogs, that can give us clues that unfortunately are missed in this question. So basically, if their dog does become reactive, then what do they do as a response? If we were doing a one-on-one consult, it would be best to work through this to remain consistent with the plan. But you'll want to create, first thing you'd want to do is really create a positive association for your dog when they see whatever it is that is their trigger, the stressor, in this case, another dog. So they could do this by determining at which point your dog can see another dog without reacting and still take a food reward, a food treat. So once you determine what distance is safe for your dog to see this stimuli, the other dog, without having this reaction, that's where you'll want to start with the plan. So you'll want to keep your dog at that distance and simply feed your dog treats for staying calm and staying positive. And eventually you'll raise your criteria for what distance there is between you and that other dog. So basically you'll decrease the distance and continue feeding treats. Now this won't all happen in one day, unfortunately. It sometimes can be a longer training plan. And so throughout time, as you keep your dog under threshold, so he doesn't become reactive, for a couple of days in a row, you'll find that your dog is able to take treats at whatever it is, a block away. And then you'll want to kind of raise the difficulty level for your dog by then getting a little bit closer to this other dog and giving treats in that situation. Yeah, so basically you want to try to practice this behavior in low traffic areas as well, where there aren't going to be other stimuli that might compound the situation and create more stressors on top of that. And it's probably best if you have another friend or family member who has a dog, so that other person with the dog knows what's going on and understands not to get closer and is kind of working with you on the plan for your dog. So that would be the best way in general to decrease inter-dog aggression. But if there was more information simply on what's different between the walks when you walk the dog and when your son walks the dog, that might help to make a more individualized training plan.
That's amazing, Jackie. So also, guys, just putting it out there for whoever asked this question, we do have training classes at Toronto Humane Society as well. So if you are interested in getting some leash manners skills, some training, behavior modification around dog reactivity, we have lots of resources and experts as well for you.
Absolutely. We do have, sorry to interrupt, we do have classes that are great for lots of different things, but then we also offer one-to-one help. So we do have behavior consultations that you'll work individually with a trainer, a very highly qualified trainer who can help you with your more personalized behavior problem. And this would be a great opportunity. This particular problem would work quite well within that system.
Amazing. Okay, moving on to the next question. So someone asks, my 4-month-old puppy likes to mount my 4-year-old spayed dog. Is this normal?
Short answer, yes. Mounting can be a type of play, but it's not always enjoyed by both dogs, right? So as your 4-month-old puppy ages, this behavior may decrease and often does decrease, especially if your dog is spayed or neutered at that age. But this is a type of play. If this is a type of play that your puppy enjoys, you might want to try to anticipate when they feel excited or escalate to the humping behavior and call your dog away before the humping begins and have them do something else, like ask them for a previously trained behavior, such as sit down or touch their nose to your hand, just to distract and interrupt the behavior. So before letting them go back to play as a reset. A strong recall is a great way to manage appropriate dog-dog interactions and is one of the most important behaviors that you can really teach your dog. So really practicing that recall behavior and practicing a few other cued behaviors are great to use to interrupt this behavior as well as many others.
All right, good stuff, Jackie. Next question. How do I stop my pet from knocking over trash cans, shredding toilet paper, and other annoying habits?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to train yourself more than training the animals. So making sure you really have a high focus on management more than training in this situation can be key. So keeping things out of reach or not allowing access to certain areas. Especially with dog trash cans, making sure they have a lid on them can really help a lot, and making sure they're sturdy and in places where it's more difficult for this behavior. So you're setting your dog up for success. And make sure that your dog does have access to appropriate toys, because they're kind of telling you that they're bored. So if you want to make sure that they do have something to do and they understand which items are appropriate for play, then we're able to make sure that their need to be engaged is satisfied without having them feel the need to, get into things you wish they wouldn't get into. Another thing to think about is, what is your response when the dog does do this? So if your response is to pull away from the dog or to chase, that might be inadvertently reinforcing the behavior in the dog, because your dog might think your response is a fun game and they continue to do it in order to actually elicit that response. So it's best to remove from the situation in calming and ignoring, so we don't accidentally reinforce this behavior. Foundation training is another great way to help teach the dog's cues for alternative behaviors, like leave it. So you don't have to chase the dog around. You can just say they're already cued and trained on to how to perform the behavior of leave it when you ask them to leave it. And that can be a great way to stop this. And this is a great thing. The training behavior classes that we did discuss, we do have a great foundation training class, and leave it is one of our best, one of my favorite behaviors that we train. It is such a useful behavior to teach.
Amazing. Thanks, Jackie. Next question. How do I introduce a new pet to my other pet? I'm assuming this is a resident pet.
Okay, so many animals instantly love other pets, whereas others, especially cats, may have very little previous experience with other animals. And so if you introduce them, they're likely to be scared. So we just have to keep in mind that often when you introduce two pets, especially cats, that results in fighting. And it's not because they're jealous or spiteful or angry. It's because they are scared and confused. And so the best way to introduce two animals in order to set them up for success in their relationship is to do it in a very gradual and very positive way. So we recommend a slow introduction process. So what it is generally we keep the new pet in a sanctuary room for a while. So that's a room that's set up with all their needs. So let's say it's cats, that would be food, water, litter box, lots of toys, hiding opportunities, climbing opportunities, everything they need to keep them engaged. And then we'll have the other pet in the rest of the household. and we will feed them on either side of the door. I like to feed them on a towel or a mat. And then each day you can switch, or at each meal at least, you can switch which mat that is. That way they're sniffing each other under the door, but they can't see each other yet. And they have the added kind of supercharge of the smell on the mat being present. And so that way they start to associate the scent of the other animal with something they enjoy eating. And that's a great way to start our gradual introduction. Once they're able to both eat right at the mat without kind of hissing or growling or showing any behaviors that they're uncomfortable, then we can move to the next step in the process, which is usually allowing visual access in addition to the scent access, but not actual physical access. So we can do this in a couple ways. Very popular is a tall baby gate, or even sometimes two baby gates stacked on top of each other, because cats can hop pretty high. Another way is to get a door stopper and put it underneath the door to keep it from going all the way open, but they can still see each other, and continuing the process. So still feeding them on either side of the door, continuing to have them have that introduction during feeding time, so they associate each other with food. But at this step, we also have the visual component. And once they're able to do this without showing too many signs of stress or fear, then we will move to the next step, which is free range access to each other for limited periods of time. So we'll have them come out of the sanctuary room, and it's best to have two people during this process. And we'll have one person paying attention to one cat, one person paying attention to the other cat, and they'll play with each of them and give them treats. Make sure you're doing lots of things that are enjoyable to both cats, and then put one cat back in the sanctuary room. And at first we'd start with short periods of time for this, and gradually we would increase it as long as we're not seeing any of these signs of fear, anxiety, or stress. And then eventually we gradually increase the duration of these free access playtimes so that the cats eventually do have the whole house to themselves. A few more tips for this process would be, it can be great to switch which cat is in the sanctuary room, provided that neither of them are very, very stressed, so that they get even more exposure to each other's scents, and they each have an opportunity to be out in the main room. And also, you may consider using a very special treat during these introductions or these periods where they're closer together. Something such as, for cats, I love using Heinz brand baby food that is flavored chicken with broth. It's great because I've never met a cat who doesn't love it, and it's approved by veterinarians for being totally safe to use with cats, whereas some baby foods might have onions or garlic, things that are fine for babies, but not so much for cats. And if we use these special treats every time they meet each other, and only when they meet each other, this will give these introductions a super turbocharged boost for a positive experience. There's also a few other tricks that can be used in more difficult cases, such as an engage-disengage protocol, but these are probably best used in combination with a trainer or a feline behavior counselor, again, which can be accessed through our website. I feel like a broken record on that, but we do really offer this amazing service. It's rare to have such a service that is specific to felines, especially.
That's awesome, Jackie. I appreciate the plug for our training. It's very true that
I swear it's not intended to be a commercial. I just feel very strongly about how good of a service it is.
And it truly is, guys. Like I said, Jackie is just a wealth of knowledge. She is our director of behavior and in applied animal behaviors. There's very few of these in Canada. So, you know, the information you're getting is quality and it's reliable. You know that it's going to produce results. Piggybacking what you kind of mentioned, Jackie, about noticing if there's any FAS, otherwise known as fear, anxiety, or stress in your pet. One of our questions is, how do I tell if my pet is feeling stress?
Okay, so it really depends on the species. Each species has a set of behaviors that are very individualized to them for what is a sign of stress. For cats, for example, I would think most people can tell the very, very high level signs, for example, hissing, growling, crouching, recoiling, ears flattened, huge pupils. But there are some lower level behaviors as well that you'll pick up on as you start to really watch. So things like licking their lips, especially if they haven't just eaten. Sometimes yawning, not looking at you at all, or staring at you intently. We generally, if a cat's relaxed, they kind of look and look away and look and look away. And there are lots of other behaviors as well. The same with dogs, guinea pigs, birds. They're going to have a range of behaviors that they exhibit in signs of stress. So the main thing we can do is just watch our animals for these behaviors, and also look online to see where you can find some resources. I believe we have plenty on our website that can help you to identify what these behaviors are in your individual animals. And if you do see these behaviors, it's really important to listen. So if you see that your animal is exhibiting stress in a certain situation, try to think about what it might be. So perhaps, maybe there's construction going on outside, or maybe it's simply a new person in your home, or maybe you're taking some sort of interaction just a little too quickly for them, especially if it's a new animal. So we always encourage using what's called a considerate approach with animals that are exhibiting any fear, anxiety, or stress. And so that's really just kind of letting them set the pace, making sure you're keeping distance if they're showing these behaviors. Try to encourage them to initiate interactions. There's a number of ways you can do that, depending on how fearful your animal is. Food can be a great motivator, and they can learn that you're not so scary after all. I like, especially with cats, to use a treat trail. So I toss them a treat, and if they eat it, when they're done eating it, they'll look up for the next treat. And that is when exactly that timing when I'll have the next treat land just a little bit closer to me. So they'll walk a little closer and eat that treat. And right when they look up is when I throw the next treat. So because cats are predators as well as prey, and so they are kind of used to eating when they see motion. And so if you just kind of put a line of treats, they may not follow it as well as if they see the treat fall. That might inspire them a little bit more. And if you can get the cat to come to you, then that's going to go a long way to reducing the fear, anxiety, and stress of the situation. If you kind of go at them, it can be a little scary. We also recommend kind of getting low, not staring directly at the animal, which can be considered a threat, turning your body to the side, and maybe tapping the ground. And another great one for cats is kind of just giving the finger like this, that many cats have a hard time not smelling it. As soon as they see a finger kind of pointed gently downwards, they think, I would like to smell that. So that can help a long way as well.
Amazing. And as we know, a lot of people have adopted over the pandemic. A lot of people are also now resuming somewhat of a regular schedule. So our next question is, how do I deal with my pet's separation anxiety as I start to leave them alone more?
Okay, so first thing I'd say is the term separation anxiety actually has to be diagnosed by a veterinarian. So if you believe your animal is exhibiting really serious signs of what you think might be separation anxiety, absolutely take them to the veterinarian, especially in these more difficult cases. Sometimes medication can be required, some anti-anxiety medications. But if you're just seeing some more mild signs, there's lots of things we can do. So first of all, you want to make sure that while you're gone, your dog or cat has plenty to do. So making sure you're leaving, maybe a Kong filled with some treats or things along toys that they can have unsupervised to play with. That's great, just as an attempt to make sure that they are occupied and have the opportunity to engage themselves while you're away. It's also important that you practice leaving behaviors and get them used to being alone. So ways you can do that are, again, it's a gradual process. So you might start with whatever it is you do when you leave the house normally. So for me, I pick up my keys, I pick up my purse, I go to the front door, I put on my shoes, and I leave. So one thing you might want to do, your first step might be to go through those steps. So pick up my keys, pick up my purse, put on my shoes, and then not leave. And you would do that a couple of times. And then eventually you would go and pick up your keys, pick up your purse, put on your shoes, and leave, but only leave for about, a minute, and then come back in. And so you're gradually increasing the amount of time they're left alone. One thing that's important is when you come back, not to make the reunion amazing. It can be tempting to come in the door and say, hey, puppy dog, how you doing? But that can just make it a little bit more stressful for them. If you show them that leaving and coming back is really no big deal, then they will treat it as it's really no big deal as well. It's also great before you actually, let's say you're working from home, before you go back to working 8-hour days away from the home again, to give them some alone time while you're there. So whether that's making sure they're settled in another room, or perhaps if you use a crate with your dog, putting them in the crate, and increasing the amount of time that they have alone. If they're used to being right next to you all day, every day, it can be a lot more stressful to go from that to being without you than it can be to have that gradually become more common in their lives. And finally, it can be useful depending on funding, how much money you have for this, to have somebody come by during the day, a dog walker, maybe take them to doggy daycare, things along that nature. We also, again, plug for our services, but we do have a special class that's specifically for separation type anxiety, which I think is going to become more and more popular as people are returning to work. So if this is an issue that you're working with, we have a whole program dedicated directly to this. It's a problem that we work with frequently and have a lot of experience with.
That's awesome, Jackie. And also important to note to you guys with the separation anxiety training Jackie mentioned is it's done totally virtually. So you can do it in the comfort of your own home. It's actually been proven to have greater results and success due to the nature of it being virtual, because we aren't introducing a new stimuli into the environment, which would be the trainer. So you're just in the comfort of your own home, and your animal is really prepared to absorb the learning and the trainings. That's awesome, Jackie, and very applicable to what a lot of people might be facing soon.
Sure.
The next question we have is, my older dog has started peeing inside the house and having accidents after getting a new puppy. What is going on?
Okay, so I mean, really, anytime an animal starts house soiling when they weren't doing that before, I always recommend going to see a veterinarian. It's entirely possible there could be a medical component to this behavior. However, if there's not, it's not unusual for a dog to start house soiling, or a cat for that matter, if there is a big change in their home, and this house soiling might be a result of stress. So you'd want to start by, really, anytime the animal is experiencing stress due to new circumstances, a really good start for reducing that stress is establishing a routine. So making sure that they can predict when food is coming, when play happens, when walk happens. I mean, what is anxiety if not being able to predict what's going to happen next? And so a routine can really help with that. You also want to make sure that there's time together. But so time's playing with both dogs at the same time, but also spending time with each dog individually, which can be difficult when you get a new puppy. They require so much of your time and attention, but you need to make sure that you're still paying attention to that older dog in the home. And also, it might be a good idea to revisit house training for the older dog as well. So you're probably already doing a pretty intense house training routine for your puppy. So maybe getting your older dog retrained by getting them back through this type of program as well, by increasing the amount of times you take them out. And you can also, if this doesn't work, of course, seek further help from a trainer.
Awesome. Now, the next one, I giggle because my dog does this. So I'm curious, Jackie, as to what the actual response is. Sometimes my dog just sits there, looks at me, and growls. It freaks me out, and I feel like he senses my fear. What do I do?
Yeah, so this is definitely one of those situations where more details would be required 100%. So where are you and the dog when that happens? What's around them? Is there furniture or a person or a toy or food nearby that might be triggering this response? And each one of these might be meaning this behavior is happening for a different reason. This is a particularly concerning one, though, of all the other questions. This is the one that so far I would think is the one that definitely would require some more immediate attention paid to it. But in the meantime, I would be mindful of your own body language and position towards the dog. So it's good to avoid hard eye contact. Make sure that you're in a situation where the dog feels comfortable. It's likely the dog is feeling some sort of fear or threat. Maybe watch the dog's behavior in general as well. So generally, there's a saying in training that is, don't punish the growl. So sometimes when a dog growls, people are inclined to say, bad dog. But really, that dog is trying to communicate something to you, something it's uncomfortable with. So we just need to figure out what it is that's making the dog uncomfortable. Listen to him as he is trying his best to communicate, and try to help him feel more comfortable in that situation. When people punish the growl, usually a growl is a warning behavior. So a dog's level of uncomfortability can escalate, and at the top of that escalator is aggression. So if we make it so that we don't want the steps in between. They might just go straight from being quote unquote normal to aggressive. That growl is a wonderful behavior that we should really value. It allows us to understand there's something going on, and if we don't fix it, the dog might get to a different stage. So we really need to figure out what it is that's triggering that dog. This might be, of all the cases we've talked about, the one that is the most valuable to speak with a trainer about, especially if you yourself are fearful of the dog. I believe he said he senses my fear. So if you yourself are fearful, sometimes when you work with a trainer, the trainer's not actually training the animal, they're training you. They're training you to train the animal, but also making sure that you just feel more comfortable in the situation and understand the behavior and the reason for it. And so this might be a situation where both of you and the dog could really value from a little bit of one-on-one coaching.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. I might do that. I might actually follow up with our trainers and see, why does my dog growl at me? All right, next question. My cat always hides under the bed when we're moving around the house. Only when we stop moving and sit down on the couch does she come out. Why is that? What can I do? So
that's generally fear. So that would be the cat feeling unsafe or uncomfortable or can't predict what's happening when you're running around. There's a number of reasons a cat can be fearful. Notably, there is a component of temperament as well. So some cats are just prone to be more fearful in general. But in general, we can usually decrease their level of fear. So not every cat's going to be that wonderful adventure cat that goes out walking on a harness and goes kayaking and goes down mountains with you. But we can generally make it so that a cat is more comfortable in their environment. So we can increase their level of comfort. It just may not be to that degree. So assuming that when you are sitting down in the house, she does still approach you and enjoys petting and enjoys contact with you. It seems to just be the moving around that's frightening her. I'd probably start with making sure that she feels very comfortable in the situation she already seems to be comfortable in. So when you're moving around, when you're sitting on your couch, if she'll come to you, encouraging that, praising that, rewarding that, reinforcing that behavior. And then again, it's a gradual introduction. So start moving around at some level that doesn't seem to bother her. So perhaps it is, crawling around, and you would praise her for still being in that situation when still being out and about when you're there. And then perhaps get that to, crouching around, generally making your movement around more frequent. And that would be a desensitization and counter conditioning to you, which is a psychological a term from psychology that we use in animal training. But there's also other things you can do to increase her level of confidence. So clicker training. A lot of people say you can't train cats, but you absolutely can. However, other people say cats are just as easy to train as dogs. And I would say that's also not true, but they're somewhere in the middle. Absolutely, you can train cats. And the more you train a cat to perform really any behavior, whether it be sit, high five, a range of different things, the more confidence they build for a number of reasons. They have the choice of whether or not to interact in the training session, and choice is so important to an animal. But also they develop a language with you, and they feel that they're able to communicate with you more easily, which can help increase their confidence and also increase their bond with you. And so if their bond with you is stronger, then their confidence around you and their fear of you are likely to be lower. Also a few other things, always helpful to make sure an animal has routine, especially if they're exhibiting fear, anxiety, and stress. And if you can introduce into that routine some play sessions, especially rambunctious play, it might increase their confidence in the area in general, because they've kind of conquered it and made it their domain while they're pouncing and stalking the one toy that you're using.
All right. Second last question. How much should I be playing with my cat?
Very related to our last topic. So it depends on the animal. So obviously a kitten is going to need a little bit more play than your 17-year-old cat. But I will also point out that cats can enjoy play and benefit from play, even if they're not bouncing around the room, even if they're just kind of watching the toy move around. If you think about a cat in the wild hunting, how much of that hunt is actually spent chasing the mouse versus sitting in wait and watching the mouse move around? So both parts of play are very beneficial. In general, I would say Playing with your cat about 15 to 20 minutes a day is advisable. However, I wouldn't necessarily do all that at once. Most cats, if you try to play with them for 20 minutes, they're going to get bored of that before you're bored of that. So I like to say maybe let the cat be the guide. So if your cat likes longer play sessions, awesome. If your cat likes shorter play sessions, also awesome. But try for that goal of about 15, 20 minutes a day. And if you have to break it up into, 3 to 4 or 5 minute segments, that's fine. If you do it all at once, that's fine. But again, some cats are it's all individual. Some cats are a little bit more high energy and might require more play than others, particularly certain breeds. So a Bengal cat, you're going to need to play a lot more. And certain young, really rambunctious cats, you're going to need to play more than that, especially if it's presenting at the same time, if other behavior problems are presenting. So if they are showing signs of destruction around the house, or really many play, what we identify as behavior problems, are really just the cat not having a proper outlet for getting out its energy. And increasing play can help reduce a lot of different behavior problems. So if you've noticed that your cat's getting into trouble, try increasing his or her play. Sometimes that can go a very long way, and doing your best to keep them on a regular routine, regular schedule. They'll know play comes at this time. And often I do recommend play right before feeding, because again, if you think about the cat's behavior in the wild, they exhibit all these play and hunting behaviors before they eat. So their cycle goes play, eat, sleep. And so if we can take advantage of that, that's useful.
That's awesome, Jackie. And I like the way you're thinking about feeding time is not just meeting the nutritional needs of the animal, but also the behavior needs as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We feed our animals in a bowl twice a day, most of us, whereas in the wild, that's not how they eat. And so my little cuddly cat Wyatt, wherever he went, is far from his wild counterpart, but not that far. And the way that they eat in the wild is they'll have 10 smaller meals throughout the day that involve a lot of engagement to access. And so if we're able to take advantage of that and really fulfill that need, we can help reduce their excess of energy at other times.
All right. So last question we have, Jackie, and just a reminder, guys, if we didn't get to your questions, please comment them below because we will get back to you. But our last question for the day is, how do I stop my cat from jumping on tables?
Right. Okay, so you have to think about a few things first. How is your house set up? So I had a case not that long ago, I believe, where someone fed their cat on top of the fridge, but they didn't want their cat jumping on the counters. And I thought, well, how else are they going to get on the fridge? And so you just first of all have to make it so that you're not requiring them to, for any reason, get on the counter. You also want to make sure that you are using management, so setting them up for success. So if you're always leaving lots of yummy food on the counter, that's going to increase the cat's desire to jump up there. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your counters are clear of anything that the cat would want to get at. So that's going to go a long way, but it's certainly not going to be everything. You can also reinforce other behaviors. So when they're on the ground, if they are in an appropriate place, you can give them treats. I know in certain situations, I know people who their cats only jump on the counter when they're preparing food. And so if you find that your cat's prone to jumping on the counter in certain circumstances, you can train your cat to station, so go to a specific place and stay there during that particular activity. And the key is making that other station or place more desirable than being on the counter. So that's usually through a long reinforcement history and training the go to place cue, and then reinforcing that so that they come to prefer that. There are a few other strategies that are recommended, such as maybe putting some tinfoil on your countertop, or maybe some people recommend putting like a cookie sheet just hanging over the edge, and so that if the cat jumps up there, that kind of tips over and falls down. But I would recommend trying some of these other strategies first. Another one is, again, if you find that your cat only jumps on the kitchen table when you're preparing food, maybe just don't have them in the kitchen when you're preparing food. These are often the easiest methods to employ.
Amazing. Jackie, thank you so much for all of this valuable information. Guys, that's our time for today. So again, if you didn't get a chance to get your questions in, please add them below and we'll be able to get back to you. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 2 p.m. We're going to have Linda Jacobson on. She's another one of our in-house experts to answer a lot of your questions. And otherwise, have a wonderful Paws in the Park weekend. Jackie, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for speaking with me.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.